target market is.
It also depends if you're looking at goods or services that you're thinking of having an area of entrepreneurship or innovation in. And this morning it struck me as we listened to some of the various panelists that they were very different in each of their different industry groups. So we had somebody that was in aerospace, somebody that was in automotive, somebody that was in information-based technologies. If you can pare down your target, it will make your search so much easier to know the industry group that you're basically looking at and whether or not you're thinking of an entrepreneurial idea that is basically procedural or a process, or whether it's an actual product you're talking about. Once you begin to pare that down, then you launch into this type of search that we're talking about to see not only what types of requests are being made from that industry for either that type of procedure or for that product, but you can also begin to see what are some of the applications that are being filed for patents and who is working right now on that in that same direction. The third thing that I think is really helpful is to look at procedures that are ripe for minimal change. So rather than creating a new stand for the microphone, you may only want to be looking at this joint right here and how that can be more flexible or go instead of 2 dimensions, go 4 dimensions. Okay? So each time you review your idea, you're narrowing it first to the industry, then to whether it's conceptual or production, then in production whether it's whole production or whether it's minimal production, and sooner you get down to the real nitty-gritty of it and then start your research, and you'll be much further ahead than if you start with a big idea.
That's very true in that sense, you know, and we're talking about, you know, the idea, and businesses don't know what they don't know in that sense, and definitely SCORE is, when I was at SBA, is certainly a very, you know, we're working very closely with them as well and getting out, and they're doing a great job. But a lot of times what has happened from experience at SCORE, working with the leadership there, is that the individual goes in there, has a great idea, wants to do something. I really want to do this, I'm thinking of meets that individual who's had experience in that industry for many years, and they walk out actually doing something else. Because that counselor really analyzes it and says, you know what you've been telling me and talking about, that doesn't fit in this industry, or that's not the way to go. Why don't you think about this way, going that way? And that's you know, use those tools and services in that sense from SBA as well. I mean, another example too is that, you know, once you know what you want to do, let's say international trade, 97% of exporters are small business in international trade, but they only have 30% of the market share. The other 70% are, you know, corporate American. However, with that being said, you know, like say Department of Commerce, for example, has on a monthly basis a disc that tells you what countries are buying what from us, what's being exported. So for example, when you get to a point that you know what you've created that niche and found that niche within here in the US and you want to expand globally, use those information, you know, use that competitive information. A lot of times, you know, unfortunately, with government, sometimes, you know, their budgets are not, they don't have a budget of marketing, they don't have a budget of PR most of the time. So unfortunately, a lot of times the information doesn't get disseminated. But there's so much resource in that sense. Mentor protege program too. Once you're at a point that you are, you can go through a small business administration and be a mentor protege within your industry and work with one of the Fortune 500 companies, and they bring you on board and you work with them on an ongoing basis in that sense. So just wanted to bring that up point. What other questions or thoughts or ideas that we have and you want to ask the panelists? Yes.
My name is Walter Fawcett. I have a question for Eric and Mitty and maybe some of those that run their own businesses. At what point in your career or life did you know that you were going to start your own business, and who were some of your mentors?
You get up first? Ladies first?
You know, I think that on a fundamental level, I always thought that I would be eventually running my own business. It was just ingrained in me. I saw my mom, you know, working as a seamstress in her garage, and I thought, you know, I don't want to be working for somebody else. I don't want to be that person. I wanted to find my own success, and I wanted to hunt and eat what I kill. And that's honestly, that's how it feels sometimes. So I always knew that this was the trajectory that I would be on for at least a while. It was just ingrained. You know, I have always valued, and this is going to sound a little cynical, but I have always valued the wisdom and the advice of older people. And by older people, I mean my grandma's age. I have always valued listening to their stories, hearing their wisdom, and applying that wisdom in my own life and learning from it. I never wanted to be the person who heard advice and didn't take it. I always wanted to be the person that heard advice, filtered it, and took it and applied it in my own life. So, you know, folks that were older and much more seasoned are definitely people that that I sought and still continue to this day to actively seek out their advice and counsel.
Well, I think I just have to second a lot of the things that you mentioned. As you were saying, when is it that you found that you were an entrepreneur? I remember when I was like 6, like getting those magnifying glasses and showing all the children how you could burn bugs with them. And you know, I knew that those things cost $1. You could sell them for $5, right? Because they thought it was so cool. So you start a business doing that, right? And as time progresses, you start figuring out how is it that you can bring something to somebody who will add value to their lives. The second part of the question is, how do you find a good mentor or set of mentors? And the first one, sorry, when you're here, I'm going to have to plagiarize your IP. I'm not plagiarizing because I'm giving you full credit. But early serendipity. What you do is you have to plant enough seeds with people out there so that they will be willing to take the time to give you advice. And you would be amazed how you find people who see how you've done something for somebody else or who've seen something that you are very good at, and they will take the time. I agree. The older people typically are the ones that give you the most depth. I would say even by far. But in many cases, you find people who are not as old who can also show you, in most cases, how not to do things. Just look at what they're doing and how they're hitting, that their heads against the wall. So keep your eyes open. Go out there, earn a lot of serendipity. Do what's right for you. Do what's right for the community. Do what's right for for the business, and things will begin to happen for you almost automatically. This week, I'll give you an example. I had the luxury, I had the privilege of spending the whole day at Caltech on Thursday. And I was there because a fellow professor of mine at USC said, you know what, you would be a good match for this. What they're doing is they're developing some technology at the University of Southern California to give tactile sensory to the robots. So imagine a robot sensing things the same way a human hand would. Pretty cool stuff. And now they're looking into, and that's the ideation process, and some entrepreneurs and students and PhDs spent the last 5 years of their lives figuring out how to do that. Now the question is, how do you get a bunch of entrepreneurs to monetize that whole concept? And the reason why it picked me is because I wasn't out there trying to make a zillion, gazillion, trillion dollars out of that idea. What really tickled me out of that whole concept was the fact that because of that, somebody could have a better hand, or somebody could not have to go into a dangerous place and risk his or her hand, or something along those lines, in order for it to be a viable solution. Again, I'll continue to take on Glenn's statements here, just because today's your day, Glenn.
It's your day.
That builds a legacy. Just making $1 million just leaves a mark.